Hi, everybody. Welcome to our team live recording for April. The whole team is here except Tammy and Robert. We are missing them today, but our topic today is going to be lessons learned from the pandemic. And just over the last year, there's been a lot of things happening other than just a pandemic. And we think it's important to reflect on that. Talk about maybe what worked, what didn't work, what went well, what could have been worse, because that's all surprisingly an option. Whether it's individually, as a team, as an organization, those types of things. So we're going to do that today, and we encourage you to do that with your teams. So we're just going to go ahead and jump right in. And I want to ask the team collectively, as HR folks and recruiting professionals, what was the greatest impact on each of you over the last year in your career? Shannon, you want to start?
Sure. There's both the professional and personal impact. So I'd always worked from home and spent a little bit of on-site client time, but that on-site client time went away and I was spending time at home, 100% rather of my time at home doing work, but then I was also having to balance that out with kids and kids being home, especially young kids. So from a personal perspective, that was definitely a challenge. And I know it was a challenge for all of my clients, really, nearly all of my clients. I think professionally, our role was different because we were dealing with a pandemic, we were dealing with sick employees, social distancing, remote work. And when we were onboarding, it was all done remote. We had to start to pay more attention to culture, employee morale, self-help, mental awareness, and shift the way in which a team interacts with itself remote. So I think my relationship and my role with each of my clients changed a bit, whether for the short or maybe even long term, but then I was balancing that out with having to change my own personal life as well.
Right. Raleigh, Rachel, what was the greatest impact on you as a HR professional over the last year?
The greatest impact is that I found Employers Advantage.
Yay!
Which is a real blessing to me. I was one of those folks whose job went away with COVID. And so I really could empathize with people who were undergoing stress from losing a job or huge job changes. And, it kind of shapes your mornings there for a little bit. But it was a great thing for me because it pushed me into doing something I'd always wanted to do, which is exactly this. Coming and working with a company where you have multiple clients and you can help and do consulting type work and be an HR resource. And I just hadn't had the being brave enough to make that change on my own. So I'm grateful to COVID. I'm grateful that it pushed me out and the pandemic had a really good effect for me.
Awesome. We're going to put that under the what worked category. Sandra, what about you and particularly recruiting, the recruiting you've been doing?
It's been interesting. So a lot of new technologies are being used, I think, from a recruitment perspective, so that you can have things like social distancing. We're not asking people to come on site. There are more flexible work opportunities for people that are out there that are looking for remote work. Employers seem to be a little more open to that from a recruitment perspective. But it has really affected the candidate pool. I think a lot of people have taken this time for self-reflection. What's really important? Is my job satisfying and fulfilling? And I think that has really impacted, especially the younger generation of workers that are coming into the workforce, and really having them to evaluate, I need my job to have purpose, not necessarily just the paycheck. So I think that's an interesting effect of this pandemic. It's also really shrunk the candidate pool for a lot of your typical labor-related positions. With all of the stimulus and the support that's been given, it's been wonderful, but it makes it really hard for small businesses in particular, to compete with that right now. So it continues to hinder qualified applicants for positions, particularly in that sector.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I could go on, but
You're welcome to go on.
this isn't the Sandra show by any means. What I will be interested to see is how it all comes back to normal, and
Yeah.
or what will that new normal be. So I know that a lot of employers right now, we have a couple of clients that are thinking about a return to work.
Mhm.
Will they be flexible? Because
Mhm.
now we all know lots of jobs can be done remote. And I think that's one of the big impacts from the pandemic. It has proven that like business can still continue, business can still go on, and you don't have to sit in the office. So as we kind of move to a normal, I would be interested to see what businesses will stay flexible, which ones will keep that in mind, and make that a permanent offering moving forward. Because a lot of people, I think, are did a lot of soul searching during the
Mhm.
pandemic and
Mhm.
forced a lot of reflection, and I think people are looking for that balance in what they do professionally. So I'd be interested to see kind of how things play out towards the end of the year.
Yeah.
I think businesses going back to normal and not finding what the new normal is will be at a disadvantage, because I don't
Mhm.
think that normal exists anymore. How things were done before cannot be done the same way anymore. And so we need to be innovative and think about that. It doesn't need to be what it is now, but it can't go back to what we know, a year ago, right? What we were doing a year ago. I just
Mhm.
think that if that's what the business tries to do, it could potentially crash and burn, because we're in a new place now.
Yeah.
And we need to
Yeah.
think about things differently.
Agreed.
Yeah. So Jessica, what was the greatest impact on you over the last year as an HR professional?
Well, crazily enough, I was studying for my PHR when COVID started. And so not only was I learning all of the laws and everything you need to know just for your HR certification, now all the laws are changing as I'm learning what they were. And so it was literally like drinking from a fire hose, because I was not only trying to learn what I need to learn for my exam, but also the ever-changing things that were happening with COVID. And still now, I can barely keep up sometimes. I have to read things like 2 and 3 times to make sure I'm completely understanding, what was and what is, and, what I need to be thinking about for the future. And so that was a lot for me to handle.
Sounds- yeah. All right, Rachel, you're up. Rachel B, OG.
OG. With my clients, I mean, obviously the majority of them moved remotely, so it was actually forming even closer relationships with my clients, if you want to look at it from that end, because when the pandemic first started, everyone panicked and thought their businesses were closing down, and what do we do? And then, I mean, I was even nervous thinking all my clients are going to close down.
Yeah.
But instead, they actually reached out to me and said, help us get through this, and what do we do? And so, I did have some that closed down for a couple of weeks while they were trying to, I think everyone hates the word pivot by now, but they were trying to figure out how to pivot. But once they did, it was a lot more leaning on me and wanting me, obviously that's part of our job, but to keep them updated on everything that's happening with, like Jessica was just saying, the new laws that keep coming out, everything that keeps changing. And some people did it very successfully, and they've returned back to work successfully. And you see some companies out there that are struggling with that. And it's not just the companies, I'm seeing it from an employee standpoint too. So the employees are struggling with going back to the office, particularly if they had COVID and if they had it, bad. a bad
Mhm.
case of it, they're terrified to go back into an office space again. And so, for the clients that can enable their employees to work from this new landscape, essentially, it can work. But for the other clients, you're looking at losing employees because there's no way, depending on what you do, there's no way to have them back at their comfort level of
Yeah.
what they're looking for. So,
Yeah, I think there's definitely going to be fallout if if companies aren't putting at minimum a hybrid approach in. Like, I'm a
Mhm.
huge fan of hybrid. If you weren't, like, we were always remote, so that is probably always going to stay that way. But maybe if they weren't before, and just like Jessica said, you can't, whatever happened pre-2020 is irrelevant. Like, there's no going back to that. That's not how the workplace is going to function anymore. It's going to be completely different. And, some positions and some industries can't help but be at a physical location, but the ones that have been successful remotely, you're going to be hard pressed to get people to come back 8 to 5 to an office every single
Yeah.
day.
Absolutely.
People are saving money, they're saving time, they're getting into routines. Like, there was a little bit of, I guess, I don't know if disjointment is the right word, when people were adjusting to working remotely all of a sudden. And now I feel like people have settled in and they're good. Like,
Yeah.
so.
Well, and some people are having childcare issues now too. I
Yeah.
mean, it's not, even though a lot of schools have come back, if your child's in daycare or, some kind of preschool and one child in the classroom gets it, everyone's out. And so then you're back home taking care of your kids. And it just keeps affecting that worker that's able to work from home, or even the one that has to work in a building somewhere with trying to find childcare for their child. And
Yeah.
nobody wants to do childcare anymore. So,
Right.
Well, and I just, people are constantly saying like, we said, oh, 2021, it'll go away. And now it's like, we have a vaccine, August, it will go away. Or, 2022, it'll go away. But the reality is this isn't going away. So, the employee with the child who in their class gets COVID and now they're home for 2 weeks, that's still going to happen. COVID-19 now exists in the plethora of viruses that are available for anyone to catch, right? And so that's another reason why I say, like, there is no back to normal. And so we have to, these are kind of the conversations that I have with my clients too, is, you need to have forward thinking and how this is going to affect you in the future, not just right now. So yeah, maybe now you have to wear a mask, but also let's think about a PTO policy that makes sense for our employees, and where they're at, because this is going to continue.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's a good question. So how are you each helping your clients be better prepared for, like, workflow interruptions or upheavals and other unknown things that get thrown at us?
Sandra had her hand raised. I don't.
Oh, Sandra?
Well, I was just going to make it was just in line with what Jessica had
Yeah.
to say, and not anything related to the question that you just asked. So my question was going to be to the group. So, I do primarily recruitment. I'd be interested to know, from our client perspective, like, has there been any emphasis more on mental health? So, we offer a lot of times, businesses have their, medical, dental, vision, like all of that. The pandemic has been a tremendous mental challenge for a lot of folks out there. Like Jessica said, like, this isn't ending. Like, at the beginning, I don't know if anybody remembers, but it was like 2 weeks to kill the like to get the curve down or whatever it was, and then that 2 weeks turned into 6 weeks, turned into these lockdowns, turned into school not going back, and kids are at our homes, and we continue that, and we've gotten kids back into school, but there is this fatigue, a mental fatigue, that has played a huge impact for me personally, and I'm sure lots of employees and employers. So how have clients reacted from a mental health perspective, and is that more of a concern, do you think, these days for organizations than it has been in the past?
Yeah, I would definitely say so, Sandra. I've had clients ask me for EAPs that haven't had them before.
Hmm.
They want to put them in just because they see the mental wear that it's been on their employees, and they're trying to offer them some help, which is great. It's good to have clients that are that responsive to employee issues. But the other thing too that we're going to have to really watch is looking for perks and benefits that are those intrinsic-ish type benefits, like, supplemental help for childcare or reimbursement for travel and all that, that has been really popular, may not be as popular going forward. And they're going to need to have some new types of benefits to offer offer employees in order to stay, really up and against the curve.
Mhm. I think there's the mental health aspect, where I've had clients ask about, 1-800 numbers or EAP lines, different things like that. And then there's also the morale and feeling disjointed as a remote workforce, because we've talked a lot about employers needing to be flexible and reassess their work arrangements with employees, and that's certainly the case. But there is a percentage of working members of the working community who want to be back in an office, who are not functioning well at home. Even my husband has always been remote, but he had an office to go to. And I think he misses that on occasion, especially since we have a full household otherwise. And so there is the need to acknowledge that there are people who genuinely who do not function well under these circumstances. And so how do you handle that if you are a workforce that is moving 100% remote? How do you check in with them? How do you, it's kind of you're never going to win. People want different things. So how do you balance that? How do you adjust and accommodate certain individuals, both from a logistics perspective, but also a mental health perspective? So I am getting those calls as well, and those questions as well.
Yeah, I think we might have touched on this when we did our technology call, but like you just said, Shannon, I had a client that they're fully remote since the pandemic started, but before that they were working in offices. Well, some of the employees reached out and said they didn't know how to work Zoom. They don't know how to work Teams. They, were used to a PC and now they're doing a laptop, and they, so there's so many aspects where, like us, we've all always worked from home. So we understand it, but for a lot of the rest of the population, they don't. And so but they're also not coming forward to their managers to say, I don't understand, because they don't want to look like, that they're aging out of the workforce, or that, they don't want to necessarily bring up like, well, I've never used Zoom before, so I'm not with it. And, so I think that plays into the mental health issues that's going on as well, because when you were in your office, you were comfortable. And now you're not, and I'm sure it's affecting your job performance with those issues. So
yeah, and I also, like, we have seen with other clients where an employee, pre-COVID had no performance issues. They really, were a well-performing employee, and then through the pandemic have had some disruption in their performance. They've had behavior changes and things like that. So, and then they're unsure how to handle it because it's out of character for that person. They don't quite understand, but that all goes into the stress, the mental stress that not just the pandemic, but the social injustice, the political like just the myriad of things that happened over the last year had on people. And, it's been difficult for some clients because mental illness is not a physical, like it's not like a broken arm or a busted foot, where it's easy for them to say, oh, you have a broken arm, so you can't lift 15 pounds for the next 2 weeks. You know what I mean? So we've worked with a lot of clients recently through situations like that, where, you know, there's been changes in people's behaviors and personalities, and, you know, you have to show people some grace and not be so quick to be like, oh, well, they were late today and last week, so they have to go because this is unacceptable. They've never done this before. You know,
Right.
there's a component of that where some people have been impacted where they may have not have experienced, you know, some mental health concerns prior.
The other thing with
And-
mental health, oh, sorry.
No, go ahead.
The other thing with mental health is that it's not like, you know, a broken arm, you have to go see a doctor because you have to get that broken arm fixed, right? Mental health is very much on your own. You have to decide that it's time for you to go get counseling or take the next step to, you know, be on a better road. Also, I really quickly just want to plug in here that Employers Advantage does have an EAP with 8 free counseling sessions. Okay, Shannon, go ahead.
Except in California, because they're weird.
Except in California. But 8 free counseling sessions is a lot. There is a monthly fee, but reach out, we can help you. Okay, Shannon, sorry.
Very, very
Well,
low.
I was just saying, the interesting thing is that mental health is a huge thing. It's been put to the forefront. Employers now have to embrace it, acknowledge it. It is something now that they have to play a part in. But it's married over this last year with physical issues,
Yeah.
like sicknesses and pandemics. So you're
Yes.
trying to, as an employer, balance your employees' mental health and then having to have emergency quarantines because someone in the office got sick and exposed people, and you're taking temperatures, you're asking questions legally you wouldn't have thought you could ask in the past, you're asking for documentation, people are getting vaccinated. So it's the mental health, and then literally people actually getting sick and needing to go to doctors, and what that impact is when you've been interacting with that person physically. So it's both. It's a
Mhm.
storm.
Mm.
I
But
also
with-
think, sorry, you go ahead.
No.
Okay. I also think regardless, you know, everyone has different beliefs. You know, there's people that believe that COVID is nothing worse than a cold. And then there's people that believe in science. And so what I try to stress to my clients is, regardless of your belief, if your employee is coming to you telling you that they've been exposed or they've possibly been exposed, there's a fear there on that person's side. They don't know if they're going to show symptoms, if they're going to end up in the hospital, if, you know, it's the unknown with everything. And just needing, you know, regardless of what your beliefs are, that you need to be there for your employees. Because if you're not, and you don't recognize the fact of how they're feeling, whether it's mentally or physically, they're going to look for another company that does care about them.
Mhm.
I think this is the first time in my HR career, and you correct me if I'm wrong, where I've had to counsel
How would
clients.
we know?
Oh, you've been with me for 2016, Deanna. You've seen all my
Okay,
clients.
but that's not all your HR career.
But well, I mean, in your own
Gotcha.
careers, like we've all
Yeah,
had,
yeah.
you know, we've all followed the same path. But this is the first time where I've had to stop and say, you know what, morality, like what morally you should do and what you should do as a member of society is trumping right now the legalities that had been the case prior. So no, you couldn't have done that 6 months ago. You can do it now. Or no, you shouldn't have done that 6 months ago. You have to do that now.
Yeah.
And so that's been interesting to have those conversations with employers, because I've had employers say to me, I've had employees say, I'm not comfortable answering that question about my symptoms. Well, buddy, you have to. You know,
Right.
how crazy is this? Like, go figure.
Right.
I couldn't have asked you that before,
Mhm.
and now I can. And so it's been a weird dynamic to
Yeah.
kind of shift my mentality and encourage my employers to shift that mentality as well.
Mhm.
For a moment, we'll go back to the legality.
I was
It'll be more
going to say,
yeah.
I wonder when that's going to go, when, you know, like the EEOC is going to adjust those ADA regulations and things to where we can't ask those questions anymore. I wonder when that's going
But
to.
will they?
Well,
They'll have to.
they have to, because they only, you know, created that flexibility because there was a federally, I don't remember what the word is, but because it's been declared a
A
pandemic.
pandemic.
Yeah, a global
Yeah.
pandemic, yeah.
So
What will
because
be
that-
interesting is seeing that as it connects to vaccinations, Deanna. Like, what does
Yeah.
this? What can you ask now about vaccinations.
Hold that thought, Shannon, because that is our next team live talk.
Okay.
You're over here, so that's why I'm pointing to you. Dun dun.
So what do you think? How do you think, if you had to grade us as a team? I know, Raleigh, Rachel, you weren't with us last year through the thick of this, and same for you, Sandra, but you've seen some of the residuals of what we did and went through last year. But as a team, how would you grade us on a A, B, C, D, F scale as to how we were prepared for the unknown and how we managed through it?
A+, I think. I think we did I'm being a little biased here because I like everyone on the call, but and those that aren't on the call too. But I think we did a great job, because it was, it was a lot of hours that we had to put in, because literally as soon as it was like, there's something called coronavirus, COVID-19 in the United States of America, it went from that to lockdown to, and we were having to, sometimes be on calls or webinars with attorneys multiple times a day, multiple times a week, just with everything changing. And if we weren't doing that, we would not have been able to provide the information so quickly to our clients. I had things where I would get something to a client and they were like, I haven't heard about that. I haven't seen that on the news yet. And it's like, well, because we're on top of it, we're getting you, what you need. So I think we did a great job with dealing with the unknown.
Deanna loved reading all those legal documents and translating them for us. We appreciate that, Deanna, still to this day.
Reading every word of those things was so much fun. So, because what I'm trying to figure out is, like, for us as an organization, what worked and what didn't work. Like, what was it that allowed us to be prepared to shift immediately to what needed to be done? Like, what could we have learned? What can we learn from what we went through? You know what I'm saying?
I think
you go ahead, because last time you let me. Okay.
I talk a lot. I was just going to say, I think if I were an in-house HR functioning on an island, I would have had days that I was producing at an A+, days that I were making decisions that were probably an F, C, D. Every day would have looked different, because I would have been functioning just like that on an island where even my manager or my manager's manager didn't know the answers to some of these questions. But I think the upside of us was that we had each other, and I became so dependent on each of you to tell me what happened that day at your clients, what decisions, how were they social distancing, what did that look like, what does the law state, what does the law mean to your client? Oh, Deanna, I don't understand that. Okay, tell me that again. What posters need to be posted? If I hadn't had each of you to support us, we got to present a united front. So we came out of it in A+, but I'm sure we had conversations where we all started at like a D and then worked our way collectively so that we presented, when we left these calls, we were well informed, and I felt educated. I felt like what I was saying, I knew and trusted what I was saying to my clients were right, because we had all talked it through into the ground. We'd done our due diligence, we had documentation, we consulted with attorneys if need be. I felt so prepared, because I wasn't on an island. I feel sorry for the HR people in-house who were. I do. That would have been so difficult.
I think one thing overall Employers Advantage does well is that we're always, not that we're always thinking 10 steps ahead, but we're seeing what comes out, we're seeing what's happening, and then we're like, okay, well, now how does this impact HR? And that's, I feel like that's always the conversation that we're having. And I mean, 100% what Shannon said, like, yes, it is the team, because whereas I may not have thought of something, Deanna may have thought of it, or whoever else, when we come to our team meetings and we have these conversations and we sort of hash it out before our clients even come to us to ask us the questions, so that when they do come to us, we already have an idea of how this is going to impact. I mean, 2 weeks ago, we had a conversation about with Sandra about labor workers and how difficult it is to recruit. And then the very next week, my client said, why can't we find anybody to work for us? We need labor workers. And I was able to say to them, well, this is why. And you're not alone. You're not the only employer who cannot find labor workers. And So I just think employers' advantage as a whole is we're just always asking, how does this impact HR? And we're having these conversations often.
So how do you think HR will look in the future, even outside of us? Like Raleigh, Rachel, if you were still, like if you were in a corporate HR role, how do you think you would change what you were doing, if anything?
I think it's going to have to be more employee driven than it's been in the past.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times you've seen employers make decisions and it's kind of a, you know, we hope people like it, but if they don't, okay. You know, you hate to say that, but this is going to be much, much different because to me, the workforce being so remote tends to lean on not as much loyalty then to the employer and more self-introspection like we've discussed. And so, and the job market's good. So people are going to have to really, really take into consideration their employee base and what makes them feel satisfied in their jobs going forward, much more so than in the past. Probably a lot more surveys, a lot more interaction, HR being a lot more proactive than reactive in some situations. So it'll be different.
I feel like all of the stuff that we've all talked about and tried to say that HR is over the years prior to COVID, like COVID catapulted us into that. Thank goodness. Like the good stuff that came out of this is the value of what HR can do outside of the administrative, and we're not paper pushers and, you know.
That's exactly what I was going to say, like almost verbatim. Thanks, Deanna. One contributor.
That's the team we are. We already know.
I was going to say, you know, like HR always has to do like, you know, the dirty stuff, you know, and a lot of blame is always pushed off, I think, on HR because it's easier from a business perspective. And I hope, you know, like my hope is that HR professionals will get a better rep. I mean, they have handled a global pandemic for a business because that when stuff hits the fan, you call HR, you know, and I think a lot of businesses, you know, I'm sure our clients included, like ran to their HR department and was like, what are we supposed to do? And not just from like a administrative or like just like simple policy perspectives or like, can you hire this? But like really big business decisions, like how are we going to run our business? And I think it just, like you said, just amplified the importance that human resources played. And I hope that pushes the field itself closer to like the strategic table. I mean, we all know that good companies have HR at the table from a strategic perspective, but not everyone.
I think it also validated us even more. You know, I have a couple of clients because of their industries before they could make like hard decisions, even though I gave them advice, they would say, okay, I just have to run this by our corporate attorney. And every single time they came back and they said, yep, you were right. And, you know, and so I think in that sense, it validated and even elevated it. And it might not be this for, you know, I hate to say it, but necessarily in-house HR that's on, like Shannon said, on a lonely island by yourself. But it elevated us, I feel, in the case of looking at us as an extension of employment law attorneys. And we know what we're talking about when we're navigating all this. So
I think too, it's made obvious that there is always a need, even at small companies. You know, I've had clients that I've worked with for years and the HR audit is finished, processes and things have been put into place. They've been handed tools that they can now maintain. But all of a sudden with this, it's like, oh, you can never go away. Like now we will all, like now, you know, now I'm getting calls at night saying the attorney has symptoms, now what? And I think, you know, I've had clients who I know need me, even if they're not quite sure yet, because they're calling me, asking me about vaccination requirements and mask requirements. So there's that, all of a sudden it's like, we serve a big purpose, and if you're doing it right, we should be at the table. But if you're only going to do it okay, you still have to have us. I'm telling you, even if you don't know it, we do serve some purpose. And
Yeah.
that goes back to Rachel, you had said like an extension of an employment law attorney, a low budget employment law attorney who you shouldn't take into a courtroom. But
Value, a value added.
But
Yeah.
Yes.
yeah. All right. So this is the last question. Everybody get your thinking caps on. What for you has been the most surprising takeaway and most valuable lesson learned over the last year? OG Rachel.
Oh,
I started with Shannon last time, so I got to go around this way.
For me, honestly, it's been that your health has to come first. And with this, I mean, I speak from my own experiences with the pandemic, but also with my clients of, well, this person only has a cough and they're going to come to work still, and this and that, and teaching the clients that I know you want your business to stay productive and you want everyone to be performing like they always have. But if you have that one employee that it's not just a cough and it is COVID and they spread it to everyone else, I mean, you're looking at workers' comp and on top of that, you're looking at your entire office being closed down. And so I think I've learned, and I feel like I've conveyed to my clients that are interested in it, is that you have to put the health, mental health, physical health, all of that of your employees above anything else, above profit, above anything right now.
Yeah. Jessica.
I was over here thinking.
Sandra, you're on deck. So get ready.
Can you repeat the question just one more time so I can think about it in my head?
What's the most surprising takeaway or valuable lesson learned over the last year?
Okay, well, I love working from home. Love it. I knew I loved it before the pandemic, but this also just solidified for me that I really, really love it. But I also really love it when like my whole family's not in my office. Like I need them to be away. So, and I always used to say to my husband, like, oh, I wish that you would work from home so we could work together. And now I'm like, can you go to your office like today now? It'd be great. I need my space back. And like, I used to say all the time, oh, the kids are in school for so long. And now I'm like, can you go to school today, tomorrow, Saturday, Sunday, every day? I love my children. Please don't take that the wrong way. We've just had a lot of time together. And so I like working from home, but I also like everyone else doing their own thing and being their own person. That is helpful for my mental health and theirs, which just also comes back to me.
Right. Okay. All right, Sandra, you come up with a good one?
I don't know.
Okay.
I mean, a valuable lesson for me personally, and this sounds super cheesy, but like I can do hard things, right? Like, I have learned that I'm way more adaptable than I ever thought I could be. When like you're like literally like your daily processes and things that you do just totally stop. So I mean, that's really the most valuable lesson. It's super personal that I can do hard things and I can, and I always thought I was flexible, but like for sure, this has really encouraged me in that aspect as well.
Hard
Good.
things are hard, but you can do them.
Yeah. All right, Rachel.
Sandra stole mine, but okay. I wanted to talk first so that way no one else could take my idea.
You can have it next time.
But I was going to say people are resilient. That's probably one of the things that I've really taken away. But kind of sort of along that line is I've loved the fact that everybody's gotten to see that everybody else lives regular old lives. You know, there's the day that we would have had heart failure if a child had started screaming or a dog barking during, you know, like a video conference. It would have just been, you know, or you wouldn't have shown up without a suit and tie. And now it's like, that's just normal. It's okay. Everybody's cool and chill. And I enjoy the fact that we know that everybody else is people. They're all people. And
Yeah.
I think that's just made everybody kind of had more of a sense of camaraderie.
Mhm.
I wonder if people are wondering if the people on the other end of their Zoom have pants on. Like how many people,
Yeah. Wearing shorts. Yeah.
commercials, like how many people are actually dressed from the waist
Yeah.
down? I just have to say.
All right, Shannon, close us out.
Yeah, Rachel piggybacked on Sandra. I'm going to follow through with Rachel's. I think I've learned to be more forgiving. I've learned to be more forgiving of myself when it's chaotic, and of my clients and my employees and my coworkers when it's chaotic for them too. And when I need to shut my computer at 7 at night, even though it's right there and I could be answering these Slack messages, I've just had to have a little bit more control over my decisions and be a little more forgiving.
Good. Those are
Deanna,
great
you?
life lessons.
Deanna,
What about
you
Deanna?
answer.
What I learned is that there is literally no way that this company would have made it through without every single one of you. And so I have to pat myself on the back for making good hiring decisions, and then you all take care of the rest. I mean, the reality is, like, for me, that's such a huge lesson, is if we can get through something like that, we know we have the right people, right? So thank you to you guys for all of that. All right. That's it for today. Next month, the topic, Jessica, is vaccines in the workplace.
Mm-hmm.
All right. We'll
Dun,
see you
dun, dun.
then. Bye.